Tonight is a first for Bible After Hours with a book launch from a local author, Ruth Page. Her book is called Too Busy to Stop, and she's going to be talking about how to find rest when you're driven by achievement and what teachings the Bible can bring to this topic. So, without further ado, welcome to Bible After Hours. Yes, as always, we are recording from a pub in Birmingham. We have our usual dictionary corner, doing the fact-checking and research in the background, and this time its seat is inhabited by one of our regular panel members, Pete Cooper.
Hello.
Hello, mate. And I'm Luke Holly, your host for the evening. I set up this podcast as I think the Bible is well worth a read, whether you're a Christian or not. But I'm no expert on it, so I thought I'd get some of my mates who know more than me to come and talk on interesting topics and record it as we go, and the rest is history. If you haven't already, please check out our website, bibleafterhours.com, for more information and our back catalogue of sessions. And from there, you can find us on all the major podcast platforms, and if you could follow us and give us a positive rating whilst you're there, that would be amazing, as it helps grow our audience. Our last one was on why work, which actually flows rather nicely into this session. So once you've listened to this, why not put that one on your playlist? We had two absolute legends on the panel who have done the hard miles, walked the walk, and gave us some brilliant insights from their own experiences. Plus, a great overview of what the Bible says about work. From the wisdom of the Proverbs, telling us to work hard and skillfully, to Jesus' guidance saying to work for the benefit of others, and so much more. So check it out. And for those listening in Birmingham, get yourself over here for the next one and experience it live. Dates and topics can be found on the website or on our socials. Our next recording is in June and will be the end of our first season. Who would have thought we would have made it through a full season of recordings? I certainly didn't. Well, in June, we'll be finishing the season on a high, looking at belonging and community, and what the Bible says on these and how we can do them better. An important topic, I think, when there's so much loneliness around. Now, back to tonight and to the topic of rest. And maybe I'll just take a brief rest now. That intro really took it out of me.
I think we're supposed to laugh at that point,
Possibly, no, I'm just saying it, you know. So, Pete, why don't you take us through our three house rules so I can kick back and relax?
Yeah, so we have three rules for the podcast that we want everyone to abide by. So the first one is know yourself. Appreciate that we all come with preconceptions, backgrounds and hang-ups. So be aware of that, and if possible, please try to come with an open mind. Secondly, none of us knows it all. So hopefully we can all learn together. And finally, don't shoot the messenger. Let's be kind and have fun.
Thank you, Pete. Is everyone happy with the rules of the game? Yes. Great. So then let's play. Tonight, Ruth will be taking us through some of the many highlights in her book. We'll firstly look at the achievement mindset that many of us have, why we have it, what's driving us, and how can that lead us to start running on empty. And that will then hopefully set us up nicely to look at rest, why it's needed, and how we can integrate it more into our lives in a positive way, rather than the crash and burn cycle we can get ourselves into. All, of course, through the lens of the Bible and what it actually says on the matter. And before we go any further, I do want to just highlight that tonight we are likely to cover issues like self-worth and body image, so if any of this does hit close to the bone, then you may well find benefit from seeking further help from your GP or great charities like mine. Now, Pete, I want to come to you first, as we have done the usual pre-recording quiz with the audience. For this one, I wanted to get an idea of just how driven our audience is. Is it full of type A, ambitious, driven perfectionists, or are we all a little bit more relaxed in our approach to life? So I made up a completely non-scientific set of questions to find that out. So, Pete, do you want to run through what the question was and what the results are?
Yeah, so the question that was asked to our audience was this. You've had your Saturday plans cancelled last minute and your diary is completely clear. Would you, A, immediately put on your PJs and binge watch 2 seasons of your favourite shows? Would you, B, go climb that mountain you've been meaning to do for ages? Would you, C, potter around the garden so you can get a bit of sun and then fall asleep on a lounger outside, Pinot Grigio in hand? Or would you, D, do the DIY jobs you've been trying to do for ages and then get ahead on all the housework ready for the next week? And do you know what? It's really even split of people.
Oh, yeah?
A really, really even split of the audience.
Are they all driven and ambitious people, or are we all chilling out?
So 2 of the answers got 30% of the audience, 2 got 20% of the audience.
Oh, so
it's actually really equally split. So
Okay.
20% said do the DIY jobs and get ahead on the housework.
Yep.
20% said potter around the garden and fall asleep with a glass of wine outside.
Yep.
30% said go and climb a mountain that you've been meaning to do for ages. And 30% said put your pyjamas on and binge watch TV.
Okay.
So it's a really even split of that.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Well, I mean, I'm trying to think what I would do. I'd probably, on a usual day, try and get ahead of the DIY, and I've got 3 kids, so any time that I can, I do try and get stuff done like that. But I'd probably start off like that and then find myself asleep on the couch, sort of with the best will and intention in the world, sort of half done. But there we go. Pete, what would you think you'd do? I reckon you're the mountain sort of guy.
I am the mountain sort of guy, yeah.
Yeah,
really
so
am.
driven to get up that mountain and defeat the whatever's in front of you.
Yes, and possibly log it as another mountain day in my mountain logbook. So actually I end up quantifying my leisure activity, which is something we might come back to in the talk. We'll see.
Okay, possibly suggestive there of a Type A personality, but I don't know much about Type A personality.
should
So
we-
what actually is that, Pete?
So yeah, the function, I'm in Dictionary Corner today.
Yes.
And actually, if you've read Ruth's book, I'm not just Dictionary Corner, I'm also the maths person as well, because Ruth's book's got 9 equations in it. But
Nice.
the idea of Dictionary Corner is that if someone on the platform, on the panel, says something that people are like, well, what does that mean?
Yes.
I can Google it, basically.
Yes.
So this is from a website that talks about Type A and Type B personalities, which is language that you've just used. So it's something that someone's created. Type A and Type B people. Type A personalities generally experience a high level of stress. They don't like failing and find it difficult to stop working when they have achieved their goals. Type A personalities.
Ruth's got a hand up.
Type A personalities tend to be competitive, driven, and time conscious in nature. This contrasts with Type B personalities. Type B personalities are more laid back, they're more relaxed, and less focused on time pressure.
Right.
Type B people are often more easygoing, more adaptable. Type A people can be more prone to stress and a sense of urgency.
It's interesting.
Now,
We've got.
this is not set in stone, by the
No,
way, but it's an
indeed.
interesting way of categorising people, I think.
And I think opposites attract, and we had Ruth sort of very much owning the Type A, and her husband in the audience is owning Type B, possibly. So, yeah, interesting relationship dynamic. I'm sure there's more to it than just a Type A, Type B. We all much more to that, but nonetheless, it's interesting to have that context. And I think we, having read the book, we kind of, between the two of us, Pete and I, we think that it's obviously maybe Type A is kind of the classic driven, but I personally think that actually it's probably relevant for all types. We all have our bits and pieces that we try to gain more achievement on or try to gain more worth from.
I think so. I really enjoyed reading the book, and some of the parts of the book, I'm probably more Type A. Some of the parts of the book were very relevant to me. Some bits, maybe not quite so me, but people I know that are Type B would relate to certain aspects of the book as well. So it's not like only read it if you think it's for you. Actually, there's so many good things that are brought into the book that I think it is relevant to an awful lot of people.
Yeah, agreed.
Oh, thank you.
Ruth, welcome to the panel.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you know what? We've known each other for many, many years.
We have.
And happened to run a podcast, and you happen to have written a book just at the right time for us to do it. So,
perfect setup.
yeah, it is the perfect match. And your sort of background, you have written books before, haven't you? But they're not of this nature. Is that right?
No, in my day job, I work at a university, and my job involves writing books there, which are mostly about ideas. And very much about the kind of data, and they are written for very specific academic audiences.
Bestsellers? possibly.
Yeah, one of them won a prize.
Oh, good. Well done.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah.
But they're not from my heart or from my personal experience. And for a long time, I'd really had a dream, a desire to write a book that was for a much wider audience, and a book where my faith could really be upfront and central, and a book that was much more about my personal experience. And so 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to go on a Christian book writing course, and I took that opportunity, and the end result, after much longer than I ever thought was going to be possible, the book is actually here.
Yeah, I mean, 3 years. Books can definitely take longer than that, can't they? But obviously, it's a journey to go on, right?
It absolutely
I'm interested
is.
in what a Christian book writing course looks like. Did they bless the pen?
Oh, we did pray a lot. We prayed
Okay.
for each other as we wrote our first drafts.
And if it's your first book, you probably need a lot of prayer.
Oh,
along the way.
absolutely did. And I think the thing that was different about this book compared to the books that are my academic books is that this was also very obviously a meeting place between me and God as I wrote it. So the things that I wrote about were things that were really important to me, and they were an opportunity for me to explore that with God, to explore what the Bible said about those things. And it was a really healing and transformational process for me. And my prayer for this book is that God's heart and his compassion and the truth that he offers is somehow is in there, because
It's definitely in
there's
there. I mean,
so much of his
there's
truth
tons
is in there. And
Yeah.
it was,
And the book is called Too Busy to Stop, which, you're saying it's from your heart. So I'm assuming that that might be one of the things that you struggle with.
absolutely. I still do struggle with. There is
So the book hasn't solved the problem.
In fact, I think right now it possibly is causing some more of the problem.
Right, indeed. It's ironic, isn't it?
Oh, the irony is not lost on me.
Yeah,
Quite
but
often.
so stopping is something that you've got. Have you gone on a journey with it, like resting and all that kind of thing? Is
Absolutely. I find resting really difficult still. I'm quite good at working really hard and pushing myself to keep going, get my to-do list done. Actually stopping is really difficult for me. We'll maybe get into a little bit of the why, but that kind of feeling very guilty if I actually do stop. If I sit in the garden, even on a beautiful day like today has turned out to be, I'll look around and like, oh, there's that thing that needs to be done. There's that weed there that needs digging up.
So that is potentially, when you're writing a book, a strength and a weakness, because I imagine you set yourself sort of targets.
Oh yeah.
Gave yourself the time to do it. There was a spreadsheet involved. Good.
Yeah,
Excellent.
with the numbers of words and
oh really
dates
nice
next to them.
Okay, yeah.
Unrealistically so, but yeah.
Okay, but I also expect that you, once version 1 had been created, maybe version 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 was still very much in your mind and polishing commenced. Is that the process? How does it usually go for you?
Wild, actually, so I wrote the first draft of this book in 12 weeks.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, the irony of writing a book about achievement culture and doing it in a 12-week kind of sprint where I got up and I was at my desk between 7:15 in the morning and 8:45, so I wrote it in an hour and a half every day before work.
Okay.
I wrote the first draft of it in that 12-week sprint, and then foolishly thought that was going to be a quick edit to finish it, and it was not a quick edit to finish it. One, because life became really complicated and busy in lots of different ways, and two, because the process of the first draft, which is was very raw in terms of a lot of my own personal experience, and I said it was a kind of a real meeting place between me and God. A lot of that raw experience in there needed some more careful thought. And actually the editors that I worked with on this book were also incredibly helpful in that they helped me see my blind spots and where I'd written things and thought about things too much from my own personal experience. And so I hadn't really thought through, okay, well, what might actually stopping and rest look like for somebody whose experience and circumstances is very different to mine. And that was really helpful, because although I had in my head a very clear audience that I was writing for, actually it was really good to kind of think through wider issues like accessibility for a start.
Yeah, okay.
We diverse, but
No,
back on
great.
track.
So one of the things that when we were talking about this previously, I liked was the structure of how you've put the book together. In that, so many of us are busy, and many of us to stop, and in fact, the people that this book is maybe written for, who struggle with that sort of actually stopping and reading something that is of benefit to them that other than work or something like that, they may not have the time to read it all in one go.
Indeed, they keep telling me they're too busy to stop.
yeah.
It's all right. You can buy it and then you can read it later.
How did you structure the book to make it more accessible in that way?
So the book is written in 8 chapters, and there's an underpinning journey or story shape to the whole book. The inspiration for that actually comes from a story in the Bible. So in the Bible, we start with the story of Eden and this picture of human flourishing, where people work and it's really fulfilling and God is with them. And by the time we get to the end of the book of Genesis, they're not in Eden anymore. They're actually in Egypt. And in Egypt, work is really difficult and it's a burden and it's a task that Pharaoh is driving them towards. But their journey out of Egypt actually comes when Moses and God lead them out, but they don't come out in just one quick step. Moses goes back and challenges Pharaoh multiple times, and then finally leads the Israelites out into a place, into the promised land. Not where there is no work to do, because there is still work to be done, but it is where they're coming back to the vision of Eden, where work and rest are in the right position relative to each other, where rest comes first and then work flows from that rather than the other way around. And so the idea of this book was there's this journey that you go through and that there are multiple kind of issues or drivers to challenge in terms of the things that can often keep us trapped on the treadmill of chasing one achievement after another. So it's a process of kind of challenging each of those step by step, coming out into a place of ending with a place of rest. So it moves in that 8-part structure. But each of the chapters is written into 5 sections. So those of you who are maths wizards will have done the maths and gone 8 times 5 equals 40. And so it's ideally you could read this in each of those short sections. So each of those sections is about 1,000 words long, which you can read in about 3 to 5 minutes. So even for people who are really busy, you could just once a day take 5-10 minutes to read a section and then read the next section, and over that period of time journey through it all. So that was the thinking underneath the structure, which I didn't spell it out, but that was the story behind the structure.
And Pete, I know we were chatting earlier, and you approved of the way that the structure, sort of every chapter had questions to reflect on.
Yeah,
which is
the
really helpful.
book is full of questions. So at the end of each chapter, there are questions to reflect on. But actually, in the middle of each chapter, you've got questions at lots of different points. So it's actually a book that you could read quite quickly, or you could read a chapter a month, or you could just read bits and dip in and out of it, and actually just. It's one of those books where if you read it too quickly, you might miss out on the reflection and the time to absorb it.
Yeah, it's not really, and this is credit to you, it's not really an academic book. It's very much a self-reflective, let's go on a journey together through that book and sort of try and discover, root out, find the drivers that maybe we don't want to be leading us astray, and then how God can guide us in that, right?
My hope for the book is that it's readable that it's not my typical academic book where, it's all about the big ideas. I think there are really important ideas and important writers whose work I've drawn on, but it's not an academic book like that. And although it is absolutely a book that has Jesus and the Bible at the heart of it, I also, my hope was that I wrote it in such a way that if the person reading it doesn't follow Jesus, doesn't have any faith, they would still be able to understand the ideas and the thinking behind it, and be able to weigh it up for themselves and draw upon that which is helpful to them. And hopefully they discover a little bit about Jesus as well in the process. That's the heart.
Great. Well, hopefully we can really go through that tonight, and we can discover the same. So one of the key things that you really start off with in the book is around achievement, and I guess to rest, firstly you got to work out why you aren't resting, in the first place. I mean, because most people, I guess, the idea of resting, stopping and relaxing is an attractive one.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I think everybody's on board with that as a concept. But some of us find able to do that far more easily than others, right? So one of the things you talk about is sort of achievement and the desire to want to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture around that as well. So maybe we can talk a little bit around that achievement culture. What are we in? Is that achievement culture a thing that is a modern thing? Is it something that's been around since since the Bible was written? I assume they still wanted to achieve stuff in biblical times, but are we in a culture now that's maybe more driven in that way?
Oh, I think historically, if you look at kind of where the idea of what I've called achievement culture comes from, it goes back for centuries with people being able to thinkers putting forward the idea that if you work hard, you can get certain measures of success and reward as a result. I think that has accelerated hugely in the last 50 years. The reason I think that is partly because of political changes, social economic changes, particularly within the UK where we're based, how that has played out. So changes to legislation that mean that gender and pay in the workplace have changed. So, for example, my mom and my grandmothers would not have had the work opportunities that I had. So for my generation, the idea that, you can do anything, be anything, that myth that you could achieve what you want, that's no longer limited in quite the same way. And I'm not saying there aren't still limitations. There are plenty of limitations out there played out on all kinds of gendered and cultural lines. I'm not saying they're not there, but there was a definite shift, I think, in the 1970s, and then in the 1980s, the end of the 1980s, you get the change in education law in the UK, the coming of the national curriculum, and then SATs tests. So for children who were born, I can't remember the exact year, but those who went to school the same years as my children went to school, they're being tested from ridiculously young ages. My son is now a primary school teacher, and the kids in his class did their SATs test last week. This is crazy. Well, in my opinion, it has created a culture where we're starting to measure educational attainment in very quantifiable terms, which is only one way to think about achievement. And that generation as well, if you think about the changes that have happened in technology, I think most people, you've had us all use our phone to do a Slido quiz,
yes.
But the digital changes that we've seen with the rise of social media, and suddenly the ability to compare yourself with so many people and measure all kinds of things, like the number of people who like a post or watch a podcast or so on and so forth, that creates a pressure to achieve that's not just about your job, it's not just about your education, it's about everything that you do and how well you do it, and what people are thinking of that in a way that's very, very quantifiable. Pete, you talked about logging things and quantifying things, and that very kind of metric-driven, performance-based mindset, I think, has really put enormous pressure on us and definitely the generation below me.
I do confess to having checked my socials and my website hits and various other things, even though it has very little bearing on what I'm doing in my day-to-day life. But also, I guess, the things that are visible that we can quantify aren't necessarily the things that we actually really value, like as far as how compassionate somebody is, or these are things that you don't stick on social media, or you don't get an exam on your on those sort of softer skills.
Well, yeah, and I mean the Bible is really so full of discussion and thought about that the things that the world values and can be measured on one thing, but actually character, becoming like Jesus, walking with Jesus. He doesn't put us through a whole series of tests. He comes to us with grace and compassion. That's the heart of the gospel, is that not that we earn anything, but what Jesus comes to us with is grace and his offer of life because of what he's done, not because of what we've done or we've earned. Yeah,
right. So on a biblical sort of point of view, we will come. Can you achieve? Can you get into a better situation with God through work? Like, is there an extra heaven you can go to? Maybe, I don't know.
Not that I'm aware
another
of.
Valhalla that you can more houses or something.
No.
So if I if I worked really hard in this life, according to the Bible, and was amazing in some particular way or another, would that get me through the door?
Oh, absolutely not.
No. Okay. I mean, I sort of, in some way it feels like, okay, well, there should be some sort of payback there, but in reality, we're saying that that's not the driver between the relationship.
Jesus had this very interesting way of flipping stuff upside down all the time, didn't he? I think, the Bible is very clear that we come to Jesus and God through Jesus and what he did for us on the cross. But Jesus tells lots of stories, and he tells lots of stories where there are kind of rewards at stake. And one of those stories is the story of a man who goes on his travel, and he trusts the servants to do things, and they have different talents and they get invested in different kinds of ways. And one of the things that's fascinating to me is that Jesus says the same thing to the person who's invested their talents, whether they've invested one or whether they've invested 5 or whether they've invested more. He says, well done, good and faithful servant, enter into the joy of your master. And I think it's really, really just we can get obsessed with, okay, so did I steward my talents? Am I going to get more talents? Am I going to be given more responsibility? Or actually, do we actually forget to listen to what Jesus says, which is to enter into his joy, which is a different kind of thing, and it's not counted or measured in that way.
Yeah, indeed. So I guess, God wants us to, and we talked about this a little bit in the last podcast, God wants us to use our skills and our time wisely, and to work hard potentially to do that. But it's from a place of knowing that we are already saved, we are already forgiven.
Yeah.
We're not going to earn any additional benefits in some form or another later down the line. Necessarily. Obviously, if you work hard, that tends to lead to better outcomes on earth, but that's not always a guarantee. And we want to sort of achieve from that place as well. How have you found the process of achievement in your own life? Have you
tricky?
Do you like achieving? What's the pros and cons of doing it?
I love it, and I hate it in equal measure.
Okay.
A
little bit like a husband.
Oh no, I just love him.
Okay, good. Excellent.
He's amazing, room, so. And I would say that whether he was in the room or not.
Well, it is being recorded, but I'll take your word for it.
No, I think my relationship with achievement is really complicated. So even when I was really little, the idea that you could be rewarded for something you'd done well was something maybe not even intentionally was part of my growing up. At school, yes. My first proper achievement was when I passed grade 1 desk camp recorder. Mm-hmm.
Which is, I'm a guitarist and I have a lot of respect for any musician. I don't have a lot of respect for recorded
Oh, come on. We need to bring the melodic instruments back into worship.
I think at grade 1, it's pretty horrendous. By the time you get to grade 5, it's good. But
let me tell you, I ended up with grade 8 with distinction. And then I actually, not on recorder, but on the flute, which I progressed to. And then I actually took music as part of my degree. So, achievement kind of went a long way. We started with the recorder, but
small steps got you a long way.
I did, but I really remember clearly that my mom took me to the toy shop in the town where we lived, and she said, you can choose what you want. We want to celebrate that you've done well, which was a beautiful thing that she did. But I can remember I bought this teddy bear, and the bear's name was Clifford, and I kept the bear with me for years. It came on every bedroom shelf, and really until I was quite old.
I must confess, I still have a teddy bear somewhere.
Yeah.
You got to keep them for as long. It's part of you, isn't it?
I'm sorry to tell you that Clifford met a sad end, though.
Oh, no. Oh, so you haven't stewarded Clifford
I didn't steward Clifford well. Clifford took a brief visit to the loft when we moved to the house before the house we live now, and unfortunately we also had some visitors to the loft who were on tiny feet, and they ate through the bag where Clifford was housed, and Clifford is no more. Clifford is a living embodiment of another story that Jesus told, which is about not storing up your treasures on earth.
Don't store them up. Yeah,
where they can
rats
be
or
destroyed.
squirrels can eat them.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But Clifford was a note in time for you to sort of the penny drop at that point that if I do something, I can
somebody will
achieve something.
show me that I've done something well.
All right, and did that sort of link then to your self-worth in some form? Do you think was there crossover there.
Well, if it didn't link then, it certainly linked by the time I was older, and the desire to be thought well of is still really powerful for me today. So please leave a nice review.
Indeed. This is the tricky bit. You put it down on paper and you put it out there.
Really tricky. It's really tricky. In the book, I talk about me having an inner poodle because I think it's a very human thing to need approval.
Right. And poodles presumably need approval, do they?
Oh, they do.
I don't really know dogs.
Yeah,
very
so
well,
we have a cockapoo, and
Okay.
a cockapoo is a blend of a cocker spaniel and a poodle.
Sure, right.
And when we went to the breeder who we bought our dog from, she explained the characteristics of a cocker spaniel and a poodle.
Yes.
So poodles are very clever dogs, and they can be quite showy as well. They're quite, Turns out that our dog was actually, the father of our dog, the poodle, was actually a Crufts winning poodle.
Okay. And poodles, okay, so they have the pom-poms on their tails and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, and actually poodles are very needy as well.
Are they? Right,
yes,
okay.
they are. Well, our cockapoo
so your
is
inner
very needy.
poodle is the
needy. It's like,
needy.
give me attention. Just show me that I've done something well. Tell me that I've done something well.
Yeah.
And then I feel okay.
Yeah.
But actually, that's
I think we've all got that somewhere, haven't we?
Well, exactly. Gavin tried to create a picture of my inner poodle, and it was terrifying, as I say. So we didn't bring that with us, but it was quite something.
Okay. Mind boggles.
Watch my socials. Who knows? Maybe I'll post it.
Okay.
It'll be good for my soul. But I think when we attach our self-worth to approval as a reward for something that we've done, that's a really dangerous place to get to, because then you're dependent on what somebody says about you in terms of how you feel about yourself, not just what you've done. And so that can be really tricky. So for me, doing things well actually didn't mean that people liked me all of the time. In fact, sometimes people really didn't like me when I did things well. And that was really painful and difficult. So it actually took me a long time. It was in the process of writing the first draft of this book that I really, really recognised that and allowed God to do some healing work in me, and to know really that his approval of me had to come first and be the basis from which I
can rest.
Yeah, and I can
else,
work.
Yes.
Not just rest, but I can work. Both of those things, but do it from a place where I'm not just like, oh, tell me I'm good enough. Please tell me I'm good enough. I wouldn't know I'm good enough. Would you just tell me, please?
Yeah. So
Which
you
is not
illustrated
helpful.
that point in your book about a poodle, but you also put it down as a formula. Pete mentioned that you had a few formulas in there as well.
Yeah.
So there's one formula. I don't know. Pete, you said there was 7 formulas. I think
there's almost one per chapter, but not. Curiously, there's not an equation in the conclusion towards the end.
No, fair enough. Okay.
But each chapter is helpfully summarised by a conclusion. If I do this plus this, I will achieve this.
Exactly.
But maybe they're a bit of a myth, aren't they? I don't know.
Right.
I think that, the idea behind the equation was that actually the achievement culture works on a kind of transactional principle, that if I do something and I put my effort into that something, I will gain a reward, whether that is people thinking well of me, or whether that means keeping people's criticism away, or whether it means that I've got everything done so I can just feel at rest, or so on and so forth. Yeah.
So I've got one example of that, which is the kind of what you were describing a second ago. So my efforts plus an activity equals reward, right?
Yeah.
So that reward being something like people being pleased with you or whatever. Yeah. But I guess the issue with a formula like that is that whilst that may well be true, there's a journey that people go on in that process, right? And so maybe your efforts plus activity might equal reward, but actually it definitely equals learning and definitely equals lots of things along the way, right?
Right. And the kind of very transactional thinking misses all of that out.
Yeah.
And pins everything on the end result and the destination and the thing that you've got there. And the thing about achievement culture is that it is totally built on an empty promise, because whenever you've got there, that thing that you've achieved is never enough, because there's always another milestone or another thing that you need to do, or whether that's like, oh, I need to live in a different kind of house, or I need to have this particular thing to wear, or in my job, I get evaluated every year. And so it's like, you've got to get these kinds of scored for this kind of thing, or, I need to be seen doing this kind of thing or drive this kind of car. It's endless and it's exhausting, because you can never get to the end of it, because achievement culture is fundamentally flawed.
Right. We're not going to finish just on that note.
Yeah,
that feels too.
We'll come
too
to hope. That's why we need hope. That's why we need another way of thinking, which is really what the book is about, that, we can't get there on our own habits. This is not a self-help book. It's very absolutely a Christian book, because the only way you can really deal with becoming free from achievement culture and learn how to rest is to reconnect with the spiritual principles, with what God says, what the Bible says, and what Jesus has done for us. That is really the only way that step by step you can walk out of these very different ways in which we get caught into the mindset that we just got to keep doing stuff all the time.
And when you were saying, you highlighted one particular saying that Jesus has, which I think is probably a good one to bring at this point. Pete, maybe you could read it out, which is Mark chapter 8, verses 36. I mean, firstly, Mark is one of the Gospels.
Yeah, Mark's one of the Gospels.
And so it's all about Jesus' life, and I don't know, was it written by Mark? I'm putting you on the spot now. I'm assuming it was, but maybe it wasn't.
Traditionally, it's connected to Mark, who in church tradition from Papias, reported by Eusebius, says that it's Mark was John Mark, who's mentioned in Acts, who records the teaching of Peter. That's the church tradition.
Okay.
But there's an element of, we're not completely sure about that, but that seems like a reasonable point. But I digress in detail. Thanks for putting me on the spot there, Luke.
I love doing this to Pete, because he had all of that in his head. That wasn't Googling.
I'd say this is just Jesus asks a rhetorical question, and this is recorded in Mark chapter 8, verse 36. What good is it for someone to gain the whole world, which basically means achievement? What good is it for someone to gain the whole world and yet forfeit their soul? And actually, Jesus is saying, ask yourself that question: what are you really achieving by achieving all these things?
Okay, all right. So we've sort of gone through a whistle-stop tour there of achievement and how it can be potentially a negative thing and influence over our lives if we're not basing it on a foundation that's not just about our worth, but actually it's about what God can see in us as well. Okay, we will take a brief pause there, and when we come back, we're going to look at if we can get foundations based on God. Then hopefully that means we can maybe get a little bit better at resting in Him as well, and working out how to
achieve the perfect rest.
Right. Achieve. Yeah, we'll get our smartwatches on.
Yeah.
We'll make sure we sleep properly.
Something like that.
Yeah,
no,
yeah. I had to stop wearing a smartwatch because I kept on checking it, and I was like, "This is not making me sleep at all."
Indeed, my family won't let me have one.
Yeah. It's. I think for certain people it must work, but certainly didn't for me. Anyway.
So is someone going to time us for the break? Make sure we come back on time.
Possibly. So we'll be back in a minute. Hello and welcome back. In the first half, we mainly looked at the achievement mindset and our motivations behind that. Now we're going to shift our attention over to the art of rest. And to start us off, we've asked the audience a question on the topic of Sabbath, which we will discuss in a minute. Pete, what is the question that we asked on Sabbath, and what were the answers? Can you find them for me? Well, in fact, I'll tell you the question. So on a Sabbath in the first century Israel, what were you allowed to do? So a Sabbath is a day of rest. What were you allowed to do in first century Israel? So
the options were on the Sabbath in first century Israel. Were you allowed to? Option A, save someone's life. Option B, cook dinner. Option 3, play a musical instrument. Option 4, strike a match. And option 5, untie a permanent knot. So 14% of people said you could play a musical instrument. 29%. Oh, it's just someone's just voted whilst I'm reading them out. And so it's updated right whilst I'm reading it out. So 14% went for cook dinner, 14% went for play a musical instrument, and 71% went for save someone's life. And that was the correct answer.
And that is the correct. Right. Okay. Fair enough. So
which does lead to some questions, like if you weren't allowed to cook dinner on a Sabbath.
What did they do? How did they do that?
So I did look that up.
Oh, yes.
And there were ways that people think meals were cooked in advance using sort of slow cook pots and other such things.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. So there were ways to do things, but the idea of having something different from your normal tasks.
So presumably they prepped it all, cooked it all, and then on the day did
various ways that it was done.
Did very little, by the sounds of it. Okay, good. Well, I mean, the Sabbath is a concept that I think is worth us really touching on straight away, because it is quite an important concept in the Bible, and probably not something, not like in our day-to-day we wouldn't necessarily talk about the Sabbath. What are you doing on the Sabbath? I don't think that's...
I don't think anybody's ever asked me what I'm doing on the Sabbath.
I don't think we've sort of... That seems to have come out of our culture. Yet, obviously, it's quite a major part of the Bible, right? I mean, it's one of the Ten Commandments, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from the word go, the idea is that God created everything in 6 days and then had a seventh day to rest.
Yeah.
And so actually the Ten Commandments appear twice in the Bible. On the first time,
is that right?
It's the commandment is rest because God rested. But the second time in Deuteronomy, when it's mentioned, the reason for having a rest is so that you can remember that God brought you out of Egypt where you were slaves. So there's more than one reason given for what you should do on a Sabbath, but it's this idea of like a change from your normal, from your work, for purposes of resting, for reflecting, for remembering.
Okay. Which I think, I mean, if I was God, I'm not sure.
If you were God.
Yeah, just
where's this going?
Go with me on this one. I'm not sure I'd put resting as one of my 10 commandments. I'd sort of, it feels to me like I'd be saying like you should. I mean, I get the whole don't murder thing. That kind of makes sense. And don't worship.
Glad to hear you.
Yeah. Don't worship other gods. That kind of, or I get that. But it's like work harder, do more for me. That type of thing. Don't just sit on your laurels and rest. I'd stick some other ones in there. Maybe, but so it's important that it's clearly on the top of God's list, or on the top 10 at least.
Yeah, I think that's for several reasons. One, in the first instance, it is because when God stops, it's not because he's worn out. It's because actually the way he creates time is relational. Primarily, God is relational. He wants relationship with us, not as a taskmaster who's demanding something from you, but as somebody who wants connection, relationship. It's really fascinating that even in the Genesis story, which comes before those commandments, when it talks about how God creates the lights in the sky, so the stars and they're called the sacred signs in the skies, or some translations translate it as seasons. That Hebrew word for seasons is actually the same word that's used for appointments in terms of appointed meeting places. Mm-hmm. So it's like God saying, I want this special time with you. So if I'm married to Gavin, who's amazing and wonderful, and we do live in the same house. But if we were never to have quality time, which was just primarily about reflecting on our connection, that would be a bit rubbish, really, wouldn't it?
I think, not really a relationship,
Gavin, is it
right?
Rubbish? I don't know. But yeah, and I think that remembering that God is God, he's not a taskmaster. He is this relational God who is the creator and the sustainer of all things, is really an important component of Sabbath.
So the concept of Sabbath is not just rest, but of relationship with God. I mean, it's quite, and obviously in the sort of the Jewish traditions, you have it once a week.
Yeah.
So it's a very regular process. Yes. We're not just sort of saying it's a holiday that you might have once every year or something. You're doing it on a weekly basis to remind yourself of that relationship, to spend time with God, not just to chill out, not just to watch a box set, but just, to actually spend time with God in that process.
Absolutely.
Right.
I mean, we could have a whole podcast on the rhythms of rest that are actually built into the Hebrew scriptures, that it's not just a weekly thing. There are festivals that come through the year, and then there are yearly periods. Every 7 years there's supposed to be a bigger rest, and then in the Jubilee year there's even more rest, so that it's a beautiful principle, which I think is really important, because actually we need rest of different kinds as human beings. Like, we all need to sleep every day. I can't remember what the exact number is. It's in the book, the kind of average number of hours that we can on a normal basis sort of stay awake, and then we need to sleep.
Yeah.
But if you're an athlete and you train, if you go up mountains, for example, there are you need to have a rest from your training day, maybe once or a couple of times a week. Or if somebody is recovering from an illness, they might need more time. Or if you think about how the natural world works, if there are crops that are in the fields, then they need to be left fallow, not every week, but every few years, so that they can be replenished. So we need different rhythms of rest that kind of shift within our life seasons, but are built intentionally in there as ways of remembering who we are and remembering who God is, and not getting those two things muddled up.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, so in the Old Testament, there's times for the land to rest. There's times where you break slavery. If you're a slave, after a certain amount of time, you can go back and become a free person again. And so all these sort of concepts sort of build in the time to reset, reflect, and refresh. Yeah. It's interesting that we don't seem to, as Christians, like this is what we're talking about here is really a lot of Jewish traditions. The Sabbath we talked about in the question at the start, they were all traditional Jewish things that you should or shouldn't be doing on a Sabbath. In fact, many of Jews still hold a lot of that still today. We don't seem to do this sort of processing as a Christian quite so much. Pete, do we have a Sabbath? Do we have a time in the same way? Do we hold the Sabbath in the same manner? Do you see that in churches?
That's a massive question, Luke.
So I like to ask those.
I'm going to keep this really short because I think we need to focus on Ruth for this and Ruth's book. But the Christian tradition for a long time has been to meet on a Sunday in remembrance of the day that Jesus of the resurrection on a Sunday. And there's always been a kind of a streak within Christianity of taking time to stop and to remember and to worship God and to be replenished by God on that. So,
but we don't, in the same way as we talked about those traditional Jewish cultures, we're not doing quite the same processes as them, right? We're not stopping all work. We haven't got the same. I don't know. Maybe it might be more legalistic way of doing things. We have just an opportunity to spend time with God, and that's the sum total of what our tradition has, right?
Oh, that's a huge question.
It's a huge question.
I think there's a need for the church to regain something of what it actually means to rest properly. And I think that we've, as a church, have been sucked into a kind of a working workaholic culture, and I think it's really important that we can regain something of that in a sensible, wise way.
No, I feel that I'm having been part of a church for a long time, and Sundays are often just as busy, if not busier, than other days. So we tend to Saturdays is our day of rest because of that.
But often it's not rest at all, because we're actually trying to catch up on so much stuff. It's really tricky to do.
Yeah, and the Jews sort of in that process, they're really forcing themselves, right? There's a real strictness in that process.
Yeah, and I think there's a very clear intention that. I think different church traditions handle this in different ways, and it really would require a proper podcast on its own to do this justice. Just speaking from very much a personal experience, there are certain things that we've done as a family that have helped us to put markers in the week to say, okay, we are intentionally going to set aside time where we remember Jesus and we have a restful time together. So we have, and for many years we had a special meal that was kind of very similar to the Jewish Shabbat meal. That was a kind of adapted messianic Jewish version of that meal.
All right.
That in many ways gave some very practical tangible expression to the reminders. So when Pete was reading the scriptures about the Sabbath, it's about remembering God, remembering who he is. And frankly, we're bad at remembering. I can't remember very much at all. Like, go to sleep, I can't remember what happened yesterday. Need practical things that help me remember who God is and why we need to rest. And so things like a meal, or maybe kind of some really tangible anchor points, I think can be really helpful to us as we rethink how to do it. And there are some great books about have been written. Some of them more challenging in terms of the kind of style of writing, some a bit more easy to read, but there's some great books that have been written about that. Can I give a shout out to them? Should I give a shout out?
Go on, why not? Yeah.
So people like John Mark Comer have written about the Sabbath and slowing down. So, for example, in his book about the Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, there's a great book by Mark Buchanan on the rest of God, which really helped me think about Sabbath and Sabbath rest and not approaching it in a legalistic way. And if you want to go a little bit more heavyweight, Walter Brueggemann's book about Sabbath as resistance to contemporary culture. That's it's quite a deep, heavy theological.
Well, I'm sure there'll be
reflection.
some people that would
some
love
people
to
might enjoy reading that. But if you want to take some more time to do a deep dive, they are some of the things that some of the books that help think Sabbath as a concept. I can talk about rest a lot, so I'm hoping you're going to ask me some more about that.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll try and put those books in the show notes later. Okay, so the Sabbath is all about rest and sort of stopping. So is that sort of is it just one view of that to stop and be still? Are they the same sort of things? Are we talking about the same sort of stuff? Because presumably you could stop and still have a racing mind.
Absolutely.
So how does that look like? We have other different words for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for asking me that question, because for me this was one of the things that I really found a real journey of discovery about as I was writing the book. That we think about rest perhaps when we're Christians. We've come across the idea of Sabbath and we have read the 10 Commandments, and so we got a bit of a handle on that, but we don't necessarily think about stillness, because stillness and stopping are definitely not the same thing. So I find it very hard to switch my mind off and slow down. I can, even if I stop at the end of the day, my mind can still run at 100 miles an hour. And actually, the truth is that sometimes when we stop, the things that are actually really the drivers of our activity start to surface in us. So when we take time to stop, those can then come to the surface. I thought, I feel guilty about this, or, what will people think about me? Or, and the stuff that is actually driving us starts to come a little bit more to the surface and shows that we're not actually still at all. So the Bible is so amazing. I think as a book, as a piece of communication, it is so rich and interesting. And the words for stopping and stillness are not the same thing at all. And they don't even carry quite the same connotations that our English words do. So there's a very famous verse, if you're a Christian, you might have seen it on a fridge magnet. It comes from Psalm 46, and it says, "Be still and know that I'm God." And often that's just the one tiny part of it that's taken out of the context of the whole psalm, which is a shame, because it's much more powerful when you understand it in the context of the whole psalm, which is this picture of the world completely falling apart, like physically falling apart, politically falling apart,
You've got a cup in your hand.
I've got a cup in my hand.
Which illustrates your point.
I have. My cup is not falling apart.
No,
but
the cup is
on my cup is a picture of a dog, and the background to the dog is a kitchen on fire. It's based on a meme, which was this kind of satirical take on the fact that many of us are facing exceptionally stressful situations, and we sit there in the middle of it going, "Yeah, I'm fine." You ask people suddenly how they are, "Oh, yeah, I'm fine." Actually, we're dealing with a lot of really, really challenging stuff. And our world is full of incredibly stressful, difficult situations. And yet, in the call of all of that, is the psalmist saying, "Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted over the nations. I will be exalted over the earth. I'm the one who can deal with it." Now, for years, people quoted me that verse, "Be still and know I'm God." I'm like, yeah, you mean I should slow down and stop doing all my stuff?
Right.
Because I just love to do everything at high speed. And actually, I completely misunderstood what that verse meant, because the word for still in that verse does not mean stop. It actually means let go or let it drop. It's a bit like if you were to take a jar of water and that water had just come out of a riverbed and it was all murky. It's about just letting things settle and stop, and letting the things that are churned up in us, letting them go. Letting them go, not just into a void, but letting them go into God's hands and know that he is going to take care of that, and letting him be God, and remembering that although very often we think, well, I at least can fall into the trap of thinking I've got superpowers and can do everything in stretch time. I am not. I am human-sized with human limits. So
there's an element of trust there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
I guess, in that we are, and I find this myself. In fact, just the other day, I was getting myself in a bit of tears about work and things like that, and all the things that I have on, and maybe even recording this podcast, all that kind of thing. And then I sort of I stopped and just suddenly realised that I'd not trusted in God in any of it. It just sort of cracked on and was trying to find the solutions myself. And maybe the solutions were I could find, and maybe that's God's given me those abilities to do some of that stuff. But in reality, I still need to give it to God first, and then from that basis, then take back whatever is appropriate for me to take back, and then the rest leave with Him, right?
Yeah. So I think the question is not just when did you last rest, but what are you actually resting in? Are you resting in, am I resting in God's care for me? Mm-hmm. Do I trust that he's going to take care of the stuff that I just really can't?
There's actually probably my most favourite Bible verse that you've listed here, which I think would be good to throw in at this point. Which Pete, I wonder if you could bring this up. This is Matthew 6:25-33. So again, Matthew, another one of the Gospels. I'm not going to ask you to do the full rundown on Matthew this time, but it's one of Jesus' sort of famous sayings. Right?
So this is Jesus talking. He says, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, or what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes? Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or store away in barns, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Can any one of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your life? And why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the fields grow. They do not labour or spin. Yet I tell you that not even Solomon, in all his splendour, was dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and tomorrow is thrown into the fire, will he not much more clothe you, you of little faith? So do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? For the pagans run after these things, and your heavenly Father knows you need them. But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well. Therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own."
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably had that verse highlighted in my Bible from when I was like a young teenager onwards. And I think every time I come back to that verse, it hits me hard. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, there's so much good stuff in there, right? There's so much good stuff. It's so amazing. we have to sort of trust in God in that process, right?
Yeah,
it's beautiful.
What I love about those verses as well is the way that Jesus doesn't just dismiss our concerns, but he really invites us to bring those to him. And he knows that we get worried about stuff. He says, why do you worry about clothes? Well, why do I worry about that? He's interested. And he says, I'm going to look after you. And he makes that comparison between the wildflowers and Solomon's court. So Solomon was regarded as the kind of pinnacle of all Hebrew kings. He had this astonishing, if you're going to talk about achievement, Solomon out-achieved every king. He had this incredible status. Apparently, according to some Roman historians or some ancient historians, that people in his court would even put gold dust in their hair because they were supposed to sparkle in the sun. They were kind of status, appearance. They were doing
glitter even then.
They were doing glitter even then.
It's banned in my house, but if my kids put gold in their hair, maybe that'd be all right. But glitter, I can't stand.
And in this passage, Jesus is going, the wildflowers are as valuable to me, even more valuable to me. And it's really this invitation to look at the short fragility of our life and the stuff that we invest in terms of achievement, whether that's the number of steps we're taking each day, or whether it's the job that we're craving, or the thing that we're working towards, and saying, okay, from an eternal perspective, is it really that big? Isn't that really that big? Because God's perspective on this is outside of time, out of all time. And just that knowledge that our incredibly big, eternal God is the one who cares about the dandelions as much as he cares about a dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. Just think how fantastic and amazing God is. I love it.
And yet we don't always remind ourselves of that, right? We don't
Indeed
always
not.
operate on that basis.
Indeed.
Well, and why is that so? Why do we tend to find that so difficult? We've obviously talked about that sort of achievement mindset that we want to do, but are we able to? I assume some people probably struggle with saying no a lot of the time as well, or maybe they want to have. They want to be perfect. They don't necessarily have that sort of compassionate view of their own selves. Is that right?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of the reasons that it can be hard to rest and to allow the truth of God's care for us to kind of really sink into our hearts and minds and shape our identity is that there's so much other stuff going on. I think, speaking for myself, the kind of over responsibility, poor boundaries, saying yes to too many things for all kinds of unhelpful reasons, can end up getting really overloaded and then overwhelmed, and then our brains are finite and we're gonna run out of capacity, and you find yourself waking up in the middle of the night or in a state of complete hypervigilance all the time, which is actually what happened to me. Funnily enough, during the course of writing this book, not because of the book, but because actually I hadn't really understood boundaries very well, or I'd understood part of them, but I hadn't understood all of them. Like, I thought boundaries were just about learning when to say no, but I didn't understand that was also being able to ask for help.
Right, sure.
Which is a whole other podcast on its own. But, the reasons that we can find it hard to rest are often, Tim Keller calls it the work underneath the work, the stuff that we're doing inside ourselves to kind of manage all sorts of expectations of ourselves and other people.
Yeah. And I certainly find that when you're in those sort of situations, it's a matter of trying to divorce yourself from it to the point where you can hand it over to God and take back, again, like I said, take back what you can handle, and everything else you trust in Him. There are so many things going on around that you can't control. And obviously it's important to think things through, and there is a strength in that, but when you find yourself on that treadmill and you're not able to be still and to actually just have that time with God, then maybe you need to hand some of that back. And how can we get to the point where we are able to do that on a regular basis? We talked about putting in habits into our lives. Are there things that you could sort of do to sort of try and encourage your brain to go down that route? Is there prayers that we can use? Is there techniques? Are there any in your book that you can use?
Well, Christian traditions over the years have set out a whole set of different practices, which I've really tried and tested. Practices, activities, or not even activities, pathways, things that you can do practically that will open up space for you to meet with God. So they include things like solitude, taking time for silence. If those of you who know me at all well know that one is exceptionally difficult for me. I don't have 6 million words to use, and that's just in today's podcast. But I think there are kind of practices that we can embed both at small daily levels and at different periods of time. So the book includes some of those different descriptions of those different practices. So for some people, like having a period of solitude, for some people that might look like having a whole day away, but for some people in your life season that might not be possible at all. So it might be saying, okay, I'm going to take this half an hour and I am going to stop and do nothing and let God speak to me, or I'm just going to use that as a time to allow myself to meet with God, is one of those things. And then there are different prayers that different traditions have set out over the centuries. The Examine is one of those prayers. So that's a way of kind of reflecting back on the day and asking God to show you what's good, where He's been, maybe things that have been difficult, and then to look forward into the coming day and ask God to be with you in that. So in the end of the book, there are a whole set of prayers. Because
I love that section. It was, again, not something you usually get in a book like this, but really practical ways that you could, try and get embed into your life in one way or another. So the examiners in there, a breath prayer as well.
That's right.
Yeah, and then some that you wrote yourself as well.
Yeah. And so it's got a really simplified set of the blessings that go with the Shabbat meal, and then there are some prayers that I wrote, partly because we as Christians can talk to God using any we can talk from our heart. We can use our own words. Sometimes it can be really helpful to have the words of other people as a starting point, especially if walking with Jesus or getting to know Jesus is new to you.
Yeah.
And so I wrote these prayers not as a kind of straitjacket, but as a starting point, if you would find that helpful, just to have them there for people to use or to adapt, or maybe take phrases from them. I find myself needing to pray them myself over and over and over again, and even again after that, maybe a few more times.
Brilliant. Right, they're really useful tools, I think. There's something to be said, the liturgies and that kind of stuff that just sort of embeds patterns into what you're doing. That they can become a habit, and maybe that's not always good, but they're also sometimes habits can be good, right?
Yeah, well, cleaning your teeth's good, right? Kind of good to have these. Having
these sort of phrases and things that you can just call upon in those moments is I think a really positive thing. Right. Well, I think we're gonna draw it to a close there.
Are you sure? I've got at least 6 million more words to share.
Well, it does have to be said that there is so much more in the book to explore. So, well, firstly, where can you get it, Ruth?
You can buy it online. Either in Eden, which is an online Christian bookstore, or you can buy it on Amazon. If you're in the room, we have a few copies which you can
buy get them signed
here,
and all that kind of stuff.
Even sign them if you really want me to sign them. So they're the main places that you can buy them.
It's, like I say, it's a great book. Definitely recommend our listeners go and search that out. And thank you so much, Ruth, for your time. So we really gone through quite a lot today, starting off with the achievement mindset and how how that can drive us maybe to get beyond our boundaries and reduce our battery power, shall we say. And then in the second half, we're looking at how that battery can be recharged and how we can trust in God first and go from that foundational place. So tons covered off. I think I'm gonna throw in a prayer at this point. We've just been discussing liturgies and things, and I found a prayer that was written by a lady, Julian of Norwich, in the 14th century. I don't know much about this lady, but she just seemed a bit of a legend.
Stop, not go into lecturer mode and tell you. Carry on.
Do you have a fact or two you can throw them?
It's fine.
Well, it's a great prayer. So it goes like this. Lord, let not our souls be busy inns that have no room for thee or thine, but quiet homes of prayer and praise, where thou mayest find fit company, where the needful cares of life are wisely ordered and put away, and wide, sweet spaces kept for thee, where holy thoughts pass up and down, and fervent longings watch and wait thy coming. I don't think they write them like that anymore. It's very good, and great to see that even in the 14th century they were still needing to write prayers like that and quiet in their own minds. And
what a gift to us that is.
Yeah. Humans don't change, I think. Okay, well, we are going to move into a bit of a Q&A with the audience and maybe get a few books signed. We will put a link onto the show notes as to where you can buy the book, Too Busy to Stop. And we'll be back again next month with the Bible, belonging and community. So I hope you can join us then. But at this point, thank you and good night.